Hello, I'm Mary Petersen, and I'm a volunteer with the Santa Clarita chapter of the American Cancer Society. And as part of our celebration of National Cancer Survivors Month, we are honoring cancer survivors in our community. And today we are pleased to welcome Kymmer and Nathan Crookston. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Well, Nathan, if I might start with you, you were 11 when you were diagnosed with Ewing's sarcoma, which is usually a rare bone cancer, although you contracted it in your leg muscle.
Mm-hmm.
What did you know about cancer at that point in your life?
I had remember seeing a movie that one of the main characters was dying of cancer, and so that kind of was my only impression of cancer, was that when anybody in the movie gets cancer, they get really sick and they have this awful death, and it's this harrowing experience in a movie. And so after my biopsy to check out the lump on my leg, the surgeon had said, okay, it's a malignancy, and I had no idea what that was. And so when I asked that, my mom had said it's cancer, and that was just it was a moment of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I hadn't met anybody who had survived cancer or really known much about it. I just knew that at this point in time, anybody in the movie that has cancer is going to end up dead.
Gosh.
So
horrible.
I'm glad that's not always the case.
As we know, yes, there are treatments much more effective than in many years past and
Yes.
in the movies.
Well, I just might interject here is they told us with the kind of cancer he had that if it was like 20 years ago, the first thing they would have done is amputate his leg and then do the chemo, but that didn't stop the cancer. And there would have been a higher chance if he had 20 years ago of not surviving it. So that is a blessing, and that's one of the things why I'm pro research and to keep trying.
Right.
Right, and for clarity, that was 20 years when I was going through that treatment. So
Right.
It's been more like 30 years ago
Right.
now.
Yeah.
When they would do that.
Right. Well, at such a young age, you went through 12 months of chemotherapy, lung treatments,
Mm-hmm.
blood transfusions, you had infections.
Yeah.
When you felt weak and sick and sometimes depressed, what sustained you?
Those times were very difficult, and especially for 11, 12-year-old. Still not really sure what's going on, but just feeling awful. It was really hard. But there were a couple of things that certainly helped me through. My mom was the best caregiver I could have ever hoped for. She was with me in the hospital. She even outside the hospital would help with the various side treatments, such as the shots to increase my white blood cell count.
Learned how to give him IVs because
Yes.
we had to do that at home, and
And so she was with me for the majority of all my visits and in and out of the hospital, and I really couldn't have done it without my mom. And I'm so grateful that you were strong for me when I was weak. But it also helped too with our congregation. They did such a good job of taking care of our family, where they would make meals for my siblings while we were in the hospital and looking after them. And I mean, even though that didn't directly affect me, it still is a comfort to know that our family was being taken care of, because cancer doesn't affect just one individual, it affects the whole family. And so that support for our family really mattered a lot.
Yeah. Nathan, cancer survivors often say that having cancer has transformed them. Do you think it has transformed you? And if so, how has being diagnosed with cancer, going through the treatment, changed you?
Absolutely, it was transforming. Whenever there is such a hard experience, it either can be overwhelming or it can be a growing experience. For me, I really learned to put my faith in God. That's one of the things that really stands out to me. God gave me a lot of hope and being able to have a lot of perspective that even though this was a difficult experience, it wasn't the full accumulation of the experience. There's a lot of positive things that happen all around us. As I already mentioned, our church congregation helping my family or my mom helping me out. There was also a lot of wonderful people that I met along the way. Even now, there's a lot of people that when I hear that they either have cancer, I can be like, I understand and I have that empathy for them. And so I think part of the transformation process is being able to connect with other people. That when we have hardships, it's, even though it may not be exactly the same, there is a huge comfort of saying, hey, I understand what you're going through. This is awful, but you know what, you can make it through. It is possible. And treatments continue to improve. And that's one of the very exciting things is like, even though experiences are different, knowing that somebody's treatment is being a little bit better, a little bit lighter, it's just even reassuring after the fact. So cancer is definitely a changing experience, but it's looking back now, even though, yes, there was hardships and stuff, I would say overall it's a wonderful experience that I had it because of the experiences, of the people, the opportunities that it's presented. And it's shaped who I am, and I'm grateful for that.
Well, even as a young child going through that, he became very empathetic to other kids going through cancer, and he, on his own, kind of became a mentor for a couple of other kids going through it, where he would visit with them, try to be helpful and supportive, and both of those boys did pass away. But I saw that compassion that he had, and I think that was because he really got it. He understood, some of what they were going through.
I remember talking to you once, Nathan, when you said that that having cancer was like being in a chrysalis, and that you need the strength to be able to break out of that. And so this experience created that strength in you, so that you could break out of that chrysalis and fly and as a butterfly. And I thought that was just so impressive, to be able to catch that metaphor at a young age.
Well, thank you. As I said, it is a difficult experience, but it's those difficult experiences that help us to grow. Part of the reason with the chrysalis analogy is that a butterfly, if they're going to have the strength to fly, they first need to break out of that shell. And so with any difficult experience, there is a lot of unpleasantries, and well, yes, it's hard, but it does give you the strength to fly. And with helping others through their experiences, it's like, hey, you know what? This hard moment isn't everything. There's everything after it too.
Kymmer, you experienced the trauma and fear that goes along with hearing that your child has cancer. what guidance or assistance or advice would you like to give parents who are going through this with their children?
You know, there is really one thing I wish I had known before, because my focus totally became, to help Nathan. We did have other kids. He's our youngest. So like Nathan had mentioned, it affects the whole family. I didn't realize until even after he was finished his experience the deep emotional effect that it had on some of our other children who felt neglected in the fact that I was gone a lot. Every 2 weeks he was in the hospital, either for 3 days or 6 days. It kept switching. So he spent 93 days actually having chemo, plus all the other times I was gone a lot. And even though my husband was there, I wasn't there. And I really wish that when I was home, I would have maybe done more to let them know of my love and care for them, because I didn't realize how hurt that caused. So I would just ask parents, just pay attention to everybody, because the one that has cancer, he's getting attention. And I had one son that said when someone gave him something to listen to music on while he was at the hospital, and one of my sons said, "Oh man, I'd get cancer if I could get things like that," And then he was talking on the phone to one of these friends he was mentoring, and he was telling them about what he got, and he said, I like this, but I sure would give it back if I could not have to go through it. And I did mention that to that one son, but I did not realize the pain he was going through until later. And so I would encourage parents to, the kids might need help as well, So.
You also mentioned that there were a lot of support resources for parents, that they don't have to face this alone, you mentioned.
Well, you know what, and learned about that, because at first I was thinking, well, you know what, I've got family, we do have our church, we're okay. But I did get to one point that I knew I needed more help, because he was out of school for over a year. And I ended up calling the Michael Hoffman Foundation, like, what do we do? Because he's only get tutored like such a short time, and he's going to be so far behind. And they invited us to participate with them in some things. And I realized how much he needed that support of other kids. When he had his operation to take out the huge tumor, it looked like he had a big shark bite in his leg, and he was mortified with what his leg looked like, to the point that he would not let anybody see his leg in the hospital when they had to change his bandages. Several people wanted to come in and see what it was, and he refused to have all those people looking at his leg. Only the person that actually had to change the dressing, he just, of course, being bald too. I mean, he really didn't. But in going with these other kids, there was one time we were at a swim party. He was not going to go swimming because he's not going to show his leg, but he had zip-off pants on. And for some of these kids started talking about scars, because not every cancer has scars, but several of them did. So they started to show, look at my scar, back of my head, or others, different things like that. And then they looked at Nathan, and I'm panicking. Don't ask to see, because I know how he has just, I didn't want him blowing up. And they said, do you have a scar? And he hesitated just a little bit. And then they had all been showing their scars. He had these zip-off pants. So he zipped that off and pulled that up. And those kids go, oh man, look at that gnarly scar. Oh, wow. And they were all like, oh gosh, And all of a sudden, it was no longer this horrible thing. It was just like, oh man, I have a gnarly scar. When we got home from that thing, he had 2 older brothers there at home. He called up the stairs and said, guys, you want to come see my scar? And after that, it no longer bothered him. Oh, thank goodness for those other kids that made him not feel like a freak.
Well, also, if I may interject, the healing process is not a very clean or very simple process. So half my right thigh had been removed, and there was also a skin graft, the skin taken from the side of my hip and put on it. And so there was a lot of bruising, a lot of discoloration. The nerves are coming back online, and so there's a lot of uncomfortable feelings. There's a lot of scabbing. And then of course, the different medicines that have to be applied to it. It's a very complicated experience because the body it essentially is experiencing trauma and trying to get over that. And so I knew how disgusted I felt by looking at it, and it was like it was there. I couldn't control it. It was there. I had to deal with it. But that experience with others of what they had gone through, and that relatability really helps. And so even opportunities like this where we can just share our experience, and hopefully somebody can hear this and realize that they're not alone. That's one of the major things about having support groups, is realizing that somebody is not alone. That this is something that we're in this together.
Mm-hmm. Kymmer, after dealing with Nathan's cancer in August 2014, you received a stage 3 breast cancer diagnosis. And you said that when you were diagnosed, you were emotionally paralyzed. How did you deal with that paralysis and become able to function again?
It was my husband that first told me that he had felt a lump in my breast.
Mm-hmm.
And when he said that, it was like a total shutdown. I didn't even respond to him. It was like, oh no, that fear that just floods through your system. And I didn't say anything to him. And then that night when I took my shower, I even felt that I had a lump even under my arm. Nuts. This is it. So that was my first reaction was just almost, it's silly, but to like pretend that this is not true. And my husband was kindly saying, you really ought to go in and get that checked. And I had a super busy summer, and I just said, I'm too busy. Really, it's like I was ignoring it. And he reminded me of my sister who had, metastatic cancer. And it was like, this is something you can't put off. So what helped me really to get through that paralyzed feeling is honestly thinking about my sister, because of what a great example she was. She was in a care facility because she had advanced stages of MS. And the caregiver realized she had a problem, but didn't tell her because she didn't want to freak her out. So really, it went on for months, and until it metastasized into her bones. And it was when that caregiver was on vacation and someone else was there, they said, oh my gosh, you have a problem that needs to get checked. And she didn't know it herself. And when I first found that out, I was angry. I thought that was so irresponsible of that other caregiver, and something should be done. And my sister stopped me and she said, we can't go back. There's nothing we can do about going back. We can only go forward. So I don't have a lot of energy. All the energy I have needs to be positive. So I'm going to ask you to not be upset about what happened. And I want to make the best of this. And her words really, thinking about that is one that, okay, I don't know if I'm going to survive or not, but I do know I can choose to make the best of it. That was what helped me get through, and that, okay, I'm going to be a fighter, and I'm going to be positive, and I'm going to find the good, and I'm going to follow my dear sister's example. So.
And speaking about my mom's courage, she's always been a doer. She's always been so active, and she's volunteered with many other stuff. But I think sometimes it can be hard to be strong for yourself at times. But my mom is one of the bravest women and that I know, and so even with my own cancer experience, she constantly had to have a really strong resolve for me, but oftentimes it's like having to have those private moments to express her feelings. And so I was serving a mission for our church at the time when she was diagnosed. So I first heard the news when it was like, hey, I started my treatment. We're working on this. It's okay. So, I did appreciate that, how it was like that at least gave me comfort while I was away to know that things were being taken care of. But at times it is really hard to be strong. And so
It's okay to rely on others.
Yes.
Yes.
Because we need them.
Yeah. I wanted to remember to ask you about the gratitude journal. I thought that was such a beautiful thing that you shared together.
Well, one thing, my daughter lived in another state, and she wanted to know, what can I do to help? There's a helpless feeling with others. And I told her, well, I'm concentrating on that life is a celebration. And I'm collecting positive notes and different things like that, so that I can keep reading positive things. And she surprised me with, I had to have a double mastectomy. And she came to California, and she brought me this jar. It says, "Life is a celebration." And she had a bunch of positive messages and notes and that kind of stuff. And I was just typing positive messages. But then now I had this. And as friends came to visit me, they would add things to this. And when I would go to treatment, I would take this with me. And I would read these positive, and I ended up with a complete notebook of all of, many, many positive messages. And I got to tell you, that was probably the best gift and very sustaining, because when you're not feeling good, I think you need these positive things. And so even though I still save this jar because it's really precious to me, it's on my dresser, and it's a good reminder to me.
Yeah.
So.
And even asking Nathan, what 3 things are you grateful for today? Even though he was going through treatment, and to carry that on and give that gift to Nathan as well, the gift of gratitude as well, and sort of teach him.
And to this day, I do keep a little journal where every day I write something that I'm grateful for. And one of my grandsons, when he was little, he called it my good day journal.
Oh.
So I call it now that's my good day journal, because I'm going to write what I'm grateful for today.
Nathan, we talked about you had half of the muscle removed from your thigh as part of your treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, how are you managing now and what is next for you in your life?
Well, after my surgery, I would ride my bike to school, and I did cross country for 2 years, and that helped to really strengthen the muscle. I remember backtracking a little bit when I was about to have my surgery. My family had been praying that the surgery would be very minor, that it wouldn't have to be as intensive. And initially, the surgery was going to be removing the entire right thigh.
And it would be he would be crippled in that leg after that.
Right.
So that was.
And so then after chemotherapy and continuing to study it out, it was like, okay, well, the good news is it's only half of the thigh. It's not going to be the full thigh. And I remember my mom being really disappointed about that. As like, well, we were hoping for a miracle. And it was my grandpa that had said, well, it still is a miracle because muscles can grow. They can be stronger.
Because
there's
they didn't
still
have to take it all.
right.
Yeah.
There's still something there. And so even with physical therapy, there was, a lot of struggle. Like
He had a lot of physical therapy to get to be able to walk again and have his foot be straight.
And then run.
be able to ride a bike and run.
That was amazing because they didn't think that would be possible.
So I think part of it is realizing that, needing to make the most of what you have. That, yes, we all wish that we didn't have cancer, but that part of is the reality, but there's still something that you can make of it. And even with my mom's experience about the gratitude journal, finding what is good about every day does a lot to rejuvenate and to give strength, because it's an attitude and it's a focus change. If we only focus on what is out of our control or what we can't do, then it is absolutely very overwhelming. But taking those little steps to find the good, to find what we can cling on to, gives us a lot of hope. I remember one time with my mom's gratitude journal, she was having a really hard day with siblings and various other stuff, and she passed by the pharmacy and she realized that she didn't have to pick up any medication for anybody that day. And something as small as that, of like not needing to get the medication today, that is a positive thing, because it's like, all right, people are on the mend. It's a reprieve in the storm. So finding those little things of like, even something where it's like, hey, the flowers are blooming today. Mm-hmm. Finding that joy, finding those things to be grateful for, does so much to help rejuvenate and to strengthen. And so that's something that I try to do, is write 3 things in my journal. I mean, I typically write late at night, and so it's like, oh, okay, got to write something. And it's just trying to find those positive things every day.
How many of them have to do with how sweet your wife is?
At least once a day.
So what's next for you now? You just graduated from CSUN.
Mm-hmm.
And what's next for you in your life?
I have a huge love for storytelling, and so that's my major, is cinema and television arts with an emphasis in screenwriting. Mm-hmm. I love storytelling. Mm-hmm. I love learning about how people overcome difficult things and the challenges that they face. There definitely is something very relatable in that with my own experience, but being able to share a message about people going through hardships and learning to overcome, being able to find the positive, find the good, really analyzing what it means to be a hero or a heroine. Because all of us have different experiences, but even though there are those differences, we all can be the heroes or heroines of our own stories. And so being able to create stories and share stories is a very fun experience, but it's also meant to be encouraging and uplifting.
Good. Well, all the best.
Thank you.
And Kymmer, having a child with cancer, a sister who passed away from metastasized breast cancer, your own cancer diagnosis, all of this diagnosis has led you into a life of volunteerism. Why is being a volunteer so vital to you, and what drives you to continue doing the work?
You know, we were blessed by research that had gone on before. I had mentioned already Nathan's situation. Also, he had to have these really painful shots that he'd put a washcloth in his mouth and would have to give him his shots because they hurt so bad.
No, I don't remember that.
I had to give him the shots. It was hard to have to do that. But just at the end of his treatment, they had another kind of a shot that was like once a week, not daily for that first week, and what worked even better. In my case, I had not only stage 3, but I was what they call HER2 positive. There was at one point that was always fatal until they developed a medication called Herceptin. So I benefited from research that had been done. And so that's probably the big thing is cancer treatment is kind of barbaric. And, but the more research, the better things, the more survivors, and the less traumatizing it can be. I'm very much for trying to find a better way and hopefully a cure.
Well, and you have done amazing work with the American Cancer Society, and you're just a tireless volunteer and so committed, and we really appreciate everything that you do. So much work. Thank you. Well, thank you both for coming and sharing with us in celebrating cancer survivors, and it's been a delight to talk to you. It's been so enlightening, and we wish you both the best.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate all what you do too.
And thank you for this opportunity.
And we want to finish the fight.
Yep.
Finish the fight. And those are beautiful closing words.
Thank you.
Thank you.